Sure.
Welcome back, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions. It's Thursday, April 17th. We have shifted gears. We're now working on H 294. It's really important to get your bill out, folks. This deals with corrections and it deals with their commissary and their telecommunications as well as compensation for folks who are working in the facilities that they receive minimum wage. So this is really, we had some preliminary walkthrough of the legislation. So this is really the next step in working with corrections, really figuring out how the phone systems work, how inmates access the phones, and who the inmates have access to in terms of who they can call and who can also call in if possible. And also the commissary, how that's set up, what products are sold there, and how it's structured within the facility. So there's separate room, is there vending machines, that type of thing. So Kristen Calver, who's our Deputy Commissioner from Corrections, is here. So welcome, and if you could identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Kristen Calver, Deputy Commissioner of Corrections. I might be joined by Nicole Belknap, who's a financial manager in the business office for DOC, who's kind of our expert on the really technical application, but I'll walk you through the high level overview of all of those services in our slide deck. And then maybe after we can turn to the bill and answer more granular questions.
She's on the Zoom. Do we?
Yeah, she is on the Zoom.
Great. Thank you.
So first we have our communication types. So your typical phone calls, tablet messages, and tablet video calls. Those are the three primary categories for communication for incarcerated folks out to loved ones. And to address how and who those folks call, they're on an approved call list. And that's usually done by a caseworker or facility management. And that's checked for like victim sensitivity and things of that nature.
So who would be folks that would be on the approved call list for each, I mean, each inmate's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's for detainees as well as those who are sentenced. Who determines what is on that list for each person? And who might be on the list and who might not be?
So folks that might be, it could be friends, family, loved ones.
Sure.
And as I said before, the caseworkers would approve those and kind of check them against the person's record to ensure there's no victims being contacted or other kind of sensitive individuals.
And their lawyer.
And your lawyer, certainly. So I don't know, I don't believe folks can call in, but there is a mechanism with the messaging to have a back and forth. And those are kind of monitored by intel teams, excuse me, in the facility. And other folks. Phone calls between lawyers are not prohibited. So those are usually on the list.
If they have tablet messages or video calls, are they limited to time or amount per day at all?
No, I think there are periods of time in certain facilities and then certain circumstances, if there's a lockdown, things of that nature. I think they do limit to kind of like daytime hours. So folks aren't on their tablets on calls all hours of the night. Example.
James, Brian, and Sean.
So I would assume this is correct, but it wouldn't be the first time I'm wrong with a simple assumption. Tablet messages is just like a different version of like Facebook Messenger or text message.
Yeah, or like an email, really. More akin to email.
One thing I just wanted to make sure I heard, so there are no incoming calls to these folks? It's all
I don't
outgoing?
believe so. I'd like to double check that, but I think primarily it's just outgoing calls.
And then the second, it doesn't look like there's any distinction made between, the kind of person you're calling and how much it costs. So are lawyers free? Do they cost the same amount?
They do cost the same amount, and the next slide section down addresses the amount per call. So right now it's 6 cents for phone calls, 25 cents for tablet messages, and just over 2 cents for video calls per day.
That's like official stuff for the lawyer that they cost too. They're the same.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you if they have like 1 or 2 free calls
That's
to
what- yeah,
their
we'll do.
attorneys.
Thanks.
But I believe in general they are included.
Sean?
And Kristen, when they're on with their lawyer, that DOC can listen in on that conversation?
Or any phone call.
Well, mostly the lawyer, but any phone call. Well, specifically the lawyer.
Specifically the lawyer, I'll have to confirm. I think there are certain circumstances where they would be But I don't know if that's true across the board, so we can get back to you on that.
And what about personal phone calls?
Same with those.
So they might be, they might not be.
Yeah, if we have reason to believe there's some suspicious activity going on, then they might listen to a recording of the phone call.
And they're made,
Mhm.
and they're, if they are monitored, they're made aware that they're being monitored, or is that?
I don't believe that's true, but I again can follow up on that to be sure.
Okay, just wondering, thank you.
Let's go to the Troy.
It's not in here, but, costs for paper and envelope. There's also costs for those too, right?
There are, yes.
He doesn't miss anything.
Well, we were there. Were you here when we did this?
No.
Oh, a
No,
few
we-
years ago. The state does pay for some of that,
We
right?
do pay for some of that, and I'll get you exactly what we pay for, what we ask.
Because there was a move a few years ago for us not to pay for it.
Yeah.
And who pays for the postage?
The facilities.
So speaking of that, can we get this thing? Thank you. So let's go into the cost, and does the incarcerated person pay that?
They do.
And if they don't have the money, do they call collect? Can they do that? Because they used to.
I believe they still have the ability on the, not for tablet or video calls, but on the phone. But we just switched contractors, so I have to dive into that contract and see if that capability still exists.
With 6 cents per minute?
Yes. And that is a new FCC regulation, which also includes us not being able to collect commission rates on that regulated service.
Yeah, can you, I don't know as much as I should about the new FCC these are like a month old, not even.
Yeah, I mean, a week old, I think,
Yeah.
is when we had to implement them. So we're still learning them. That one in particular stuck out to us. And then there's limits on what we can charge for video and tablet calls. And these are within those limits.
So you have a new contract, you said.
Yes, we are in an
Is it
overlap.
with a new company?
Yes, so we're in an overlap period for the next 2 months while they change over services, so we can ensure that there was no break in services for individuals. The current vendor is Viapath, which we've had for a number of years. The new incoming vendor is IC Solutions. And new to this agreement, we have a separate commissary contract, still with Keefe, but previously it was a subcontract of Viapath.
So when is the IC Solutions contract? For how long is that?
Is until January of 2033.
And
Same for
IC
Key.
Solutions is key.
Yes, yeah, they're all the same company. We do have 2 separate contracts with the sub-companies.
So IC Solution is part of Keefe.
Yes. One of the same.
And there's-
James, whoops,
So
James and then Kevin.
I have a question about, so the tablet messaging, which I mean, like 4 messages is $1, I guess. Is there a length limit on messaging?
Oh, like number of characters, I don't know, but I can find that out.
Reason, I mean, I was just curious. I mean, obviously,
Yeah, you'd want to maximize your,
maximize, I mean, doesn't seem like a lot at glance, but then you're thinking, well, you probably don't have tons of money. You're not exactly making 80 grand a year.
yeah.
And so, 4 messages is $1. I mean, you're not gonna, if it's very short and anyway, I was just pondering, I'm wondering.
So if they send a message to a family member, it'd be by email,
Yeah, it's similar to email.
and that would be 25 cents per message, however, long or whatever.
Mhm.
So a person on the outside responds.
Mhm.
Is there a charge to that?
I believe it's just the outgoing message they're charged for because they can't help if something is returned, but
You got to check.
we will verify. Once the contract. Go ahead.
And are the new contracts just because the contract's old, or are you saying you want something different and you're competitively bidding? Why are the new contracts?
We had a term limit and we've already exhausted all of the extensions. So we had to go out for bid and complete the procurement process.
Got it.
We just have to change vendors.
If you're forced to go out?
So with the IC Solution, that goes until January of 23.
Mhm.
No,
33.
33, I was gonna say.
Yeah, they're a bit lengthier than their standard state contract just because of the body of work that's involved. It's a little dysregulating to the system if we're changing every 3 years.
Do you have a chance to opt out within that 8-year period?
Yes,
8
there's
years.
always a termination clause in the contract. I think this one, it'll be in the contract documents you have. Typically, we do 120 days for larger contracts of this size. Generally speaking, they're 30 days.
With this new contract, this is what the costs are reflecting the new contract.
Yes, except for way down at the bottom, tablet video calls will decrease to 0.16 per minute when ICS takes over in about 2 months.
So the current cost, is that more than what was charged with Viapath, or is it the same?
No, it's slightly less to come in compliance with the FCC regulations.
Right.
Have you given any thought or do you have any information on how our capacity to do this in-house would change with a robust Wi-Fi network?
We have not done that analysis, no, but I think you hit the key is to have Wi-Fi first.
Yeah.
And kind of for many of the things in the bill, Wi-Fi would be really critical to be able to bring any of the services in-house, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Right?
Just the nature of the contract, does DOC receive any of this money or this all goes to the vendor?
We do not receive commissions on phone calls anymore per the FCC regulations. There is a small amount of commissions on tablet messages and video calls now. If Nicole's on, I might ask her if she can detail what that is. But it is substantially less than previous due to the new regulations.
Yes, I can bring up the contract and take a look.
So you would not receive commission on the calls,
On phone calls.
but you might on the tablet.
And does that just go to the DOC budget then, or what? Does that
No,
mean?
it goes to the rec fund,
Oh,
which
yes.
goes to support activities for incarcerated folks.
What happens if? What happens to a person who's incarcerated that just doesn't have the means to pay for this? What happens? I mean,
Yeah. We do have what we call indigent funds for folks, so they are able to make phone calls, like to their attorneys, for example. I don't believe they can to other friends and families, but there is in-person visitation optional as well, if they're approved to come visit.
does DOC run into a substantial number of folks who are incarcerated that don't have the means to pay for this?
I might pass that one to Nicole. She has a good eye on the more granular detail.
It hasn't appeared to be a big issue at all. And family and friends have ways to deposit funds to the incarcerated account as well. If they don't have funds on their account. But indigent, it's just not something that we're getting a lot of complaints on.
There's no means for someone who's incarcerated to really earn any money. So they're really dependent on outside family or friends to deposit money into an account that they can access. Are you finding that there's a difference in terms of family and friends being willing to submit money to an individual's account based on the male offenders versus the female offenders?
Not that I've seen. I think there's still a number of folks that that's the primary way that folks get funds on their accounts is from outside deposits from friends and family. There's a couple different ways they can do that. There's an online portal, and then they can send in a paper check to a lockbox system that we have set up. I haven't seen a lot of kind of disparity between the men and women's populations. But again, we haven't really done a deep dive on that to see.
And they can earn, they do earn wages as well if they have a job.
Not all of them.
I'll get started.
If you got 1,200 incarcerated, you got maybe 200 working,
Oh, really?
That's it.
maybe.
We talked about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, what jobs are they gonna do? They can be in the kitchen, they can do laundry. We've done away with a lot of our work. A lot of our jobs, did away with VCI. They're just making license plates. They may be doing cleaning of the facility, laundry and kitchen work, but that's not involving 1,200 incarcerated.
Still be your school kids.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
Was that?
Okay.
Nicole, I think I heard you say there aren't many complaints because people don't have funds. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm not hearing, I haven't been reached out to that it's a big concern that people do not have funds and aren't able to have the means to make calls and stuff.
Do you believe that's because they don't want to complain because it doesn't help them? Or do you really believe there's enough funds? And this may be too granular, but do you have any idea what the average funding is for the incarcerated? I mean, are we talking tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars? Any idea?
You're talking funds on their account?
Yes, on their account. I mean, we talking about tens of dollars that are in there or hundreds of dollars that people
It really varies. I mean,
all
some
over the
people-
place? Yep, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Did you give a range? I think you were gonna give a range of what might be in accounts. Is it?
0 to what?
Well, actually, I can log in and take a look here.
It just gives a feel for,
Disparity.
yeah, one of the things.
There are also outside groups that contribute to this commissary as well. So,
Be like other province.
advocacy groups. Mostly I think for CRCF, but
CRC.
Women's facility.
Every job.
So you're looking at those, Nicole?
Yes, I am right. I'm pulling a report right now.
And can I just jump on this? I would love to see this, a report of this. I would like the data in front of me. I don't want to have this conversation based on, I don't think that's really a problem.
Okay,
I'm not saying you said.
absolutely. No, I
heard that
understand.
from-
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
this
we can-
is data that would be really important for us to have.
Trying to get
Yes,
the mag-
absolutely. And the
So you're asking
facilities
for
have
account
it.
balances?
Have you, Nicole,
Balances?
Nicole, have you pulled it up so at least you can give us a thumbnail sketch of what you're seeing?
It's still processing right now, but. I will
And
let you
preferably
know.
not, preferably not point in time data, preferably any sort of long range data you can give us on how those funds, and I don't need names attached to them or anything, but what is
What's the
what are the
range?
trends in these accounts? And I'll just remind the committee that absence of complaints doesn't mean that complaints don't exist. To your point, it may mean I don't feel comfortable complaining, or
Aren't done doing
I
it.
don't want my fellow inmates to know that
I don't have-
I'm willing to
Mhm.
bargain for money or trade for money or, right. So there's a lot of things that are going to impact that sort of information.
To throw another one in there, Troy. I mean, it could be somebody doesn't want to admit it because they're like, I don't want to feel like nobody's helping me. Like that personal. Yeah.
How's it coming along, Nicole?
It says processing. Well, it's a lot of data, so it may take a few minutes.
Okay, so when you get that, can you let us know?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And then Kristen, did you say that these indigent funds, those are only used for telephone access, or can they be used for other services or goods?
As far as I know, it's only telephone access, but
the lawyer,
for lawyers.
only for the
Yeah,
lawyer.
we can provide more information on that though too.
Was it?
Representative Hedrick's point, I'd also just point you to the PRIN survey data, which I can send to you. They did look at commissary specifically. And again, that's the UVM independent research data. There's a whole page on commissary. And I think, something that we've identified with Abby and Kathy from UVM is that that's a major area of improvement for the department. I think a majority of folks would like to see more vendors, more options, better quality, better costs. So I'd encourage you to look at that, and I can send it around to the committee.
Let's get through the calls first before we get into commissary.
And the new contractor is providing 2 free calls per individual each week.
Is there,
I didn't understand. Sorry.
2 free calls per
2 free
individual
calls.
per week. Yep.
is there a length of time on those calls? And it's just the calls, it's not the tablet. video calls or messages,
Just phone calls, yeah.
just the phone calls. Is there a time limit on those?
Does not specify in the contract. It just says 2 free calls per individual each week. We can check on that.
Each week.
Each
Yeah.
week? Yes.
Boy, that's real nice of them.
Better than
I
zero.
can't tell if you're being sarcastic.
I'm being sarcastic.
I'm sure either, yeah.
Anything else on the calls before we get into the volume? And then we can look at the vendor issue. Okay, let's go to the volume part.
Okay. So in December of 2024, we did an analysis of the volume of calls, and there were 80,000 calls made, 3,100 video calls, and a total of 54,000 minutes.
And that's just for the month?
That's just for the month of December, correct?
That number of minutes is a combination of both.
It's just video calls.
Just video calls.
Okay, thank you.
It is the holiday season. Is that
Right.
higher than you would think, or is that a pretty?
I think you look back a couple of months for that comparison, and it's slightly higher to account, like you said, for the holidays. But we wanted to capture kind of the higher volume so we could look at cost if the state were to move forward with funding those calls. And then that cost came out to be 1.3 million. We say plus because we do have some other states surrounding us, Massachusetts specifically, who did go to state funded calls and saw a dramatic increase in the number of calls, as one might expect. So that is really the kind of the floor for what the calls might cost the state.
And how much? Is there a cost to DOC to pay the vendor, or does that just totally come out of the cost for the calls and the messaging?
It's a $0 contract, so they come from the incarcerated individuals making the calls.
And to clarify the point you made with the increase when Massachusetts went to zero cost calls, is Massachusetts using a state system or are they still using a contract? Like this
I
is
believe
just
they're still using a
Massachusetts paying the
contractor.
contract.
Yeah, this is just them paying the contractor.
And are there any states that you know of that just do this all in-house?
I don't know of any states that do it in-house, no.
Okay.
I think there are 5 states, and we have some slides later on. 5 states that cover their costs that I'm aware of. Some are making some changes, that as you'll see, based on budgetary motion.
So let's go to the vendor.
Okay, so our current vendor,
Before you go there, for the calls, is it just within our Vermont facilities that would not include
correct.
Mississippi? Is that a different vendor down there?
Yes, they use their own vendor. separate
That's
from ours.
totally different, so we'll need to get the information on that. If you included the information, is that further in?
No, we haven't included that because we don't manage those agreements, but we can get that information for you.
My goodness.
Bless you.
Bless you.
But they have to pay down there too, right? Like it's not part of your
I
contract.
believe they do also call or pay in, but I can clarify and get to that.
And the new FCC regulations are going to apply
Yes.
there too.
Yes, they would be nationwide.
And Chair, just to clarify, that number there, that, north of $1 million somewhere, is just for the phone calls. There'd be additional cost, obviously, for covering video and.
So that's just, that 1.3 million plus is just for the phone calls.
For phone calls.
Oh, wow. That's significant difference.
Mhm.
So we would like to get the information on the out-of-state beds, what that, and who the contractor is, who the vendor is. Maybe the same vendor, or might be different. So if we could go into the vendor, we talked a little bit about this. Anyway.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that. We are currently in a 2-month kind of overlap while we transition to IC Solutions. But the services are right now still being provided by Viapath until mid-June. Keefe is still doing commissary as they were. No changes there. We're just operating under a new agreement with that. And then I talked about the decrease in the video call rate or no, slight increase in the video call rate. That'll take effect with the new contract.
What are you seeing folks using? Are they doing more phone calls or are they doing more the tablet?
I think largely folks depend on the phone calls. Right now, we don't have a one-to-one. Sorry, I keep getting. With the tablets, we hope to actually have that full saturation available with the new contractor.
What do you mean a one-to-one?
Not every single person has a tablet in hand.
Okay.
And so, like I said, we hope to change that with the new vendor. And then I suspect we'll see an increase in the messaging and video calls.
So does the
As a new-
vendor provide the tablet?
They do, yes.
And can those tablets be used for anything else besides messaging or video calls?
Yes, and in the new contract, there'll be a lot more offered. They can do telehealth from their tablets. They can access educational services, an online library. They can order commissary from their tablet and things of that nature.
So would all of that be charged those fees?
Some of them are free. I think most of those kind of auxiliary services are free to them, and it's really just these services that are charged.
And then James, and then.
And those tablets are always, two-part question, always in their possession. They don't have to like check them out.
I think it depends on the unit. Some of them close down at night and they put them in like a charging station. There might be some circumstances where people are allowed to have them, but they're not supposed to be on.
And again, with the Wi-Fi question, what impact is the absence of Wi-Fi having on their use of those tablets? Like, where can they go to use them?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can use them in their units. The vendors supply the Wi-Fi in the facility just for the use of the tablets. And they provide all the hotspots. But it's a very locked down network, so they can only access the services within the tablets.
And how would that change, do you think, if we broaden state provided Wi-Fi?
We would, as far as that network itself,
Yeah.
I think we would still have that network so
Is it
that
still
it's
locked
separate
down?
operating systems for state platform versus the tablets. But the state operating network would allow us to do many other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, separate from that, yeah.
Education.
So what I'm
You
hearing,
say it can be used in the unit.
Yes.
That's a living unit.
Living unit.
Is that within the cell or is that the common room?
I think it depends on the unit and the facility as far as what the security level of the unit itself is. I know the common area is probably usable in all facilities, but then whether they can take it into their actual cell will vary.
James, Connor, and Kevin.
Troy asked my question.
Connor and Kevin.
Yeah, actually, I had a similar question, but like, do you mind just taking us through what the process looks like? I want to make a phone call. Like, what hours of the
Yeah.
day can I do it? Am I brought somewhere? Are there other inmates around me? You know, just what
Yeah,
it look like?
So there's two ways to make a phone call. There's the hard kiosk. I think if you've been to a facility, you've seen those kind of silver boxes. There's that, so they're not private. I think depending on the nature of the call, the approval level of the individual, they could have a more private phone call. There is technology on the new tablets that allows for some privacy. Like, so if I'm holding a tablet, I can't like turn it for someone else. Like there's like a facial recognition to kind of lock down like who's making the call, just to avoid kind of victim contact and things of that nature. If it's a telehealth appointment, they would be taken to a more secure place to have that visit. The hours, I think I talked a little bit about this earlier, kind of vary. I think standard would be kind of the daytime hours. We'll call it, and this is a rough estimate, 8 to 6 or 7. But generally it depends on the facility, what kind of status it's in general.
And could those privileges be taken away from you if,
Probably if you're in restricted housing,
Yeah.
folks don't have access to tablets, but they still are able to do some things. Like submit grievances in paper form. So that is kind of the fail safe for those systems is to fall back on paper.
thanks.
Kevin?
so I think I'm understanding that the contract provides the tablets and then the incarcerated pay. So there's no additional cost to DLC.
Correct. Yeah, it's a self-sustaining.
So Nicole, if you found that information,
So I just want to explain how the current contractor works. So what I can provide to you is a resident balance list, which shows their banking commissary balance. They have a phone account as well with Viapath, which is kept by them. So I would have to go to them to see what their phone balances are. So there's two separate accounts, which I don't have access to the phone balance. I have to go to Viapath to get that. They can, from their commissary account, they can purchase phone time, which would then transfer over to their phone account, which they can make phone calls from. So I would think that you would want both of those account balances. The new vendor is going to be, it's called the Direct Link Trust. So instead of purchasing, say, $5 or $10 in phone time, it's a direct link. So they can, when they make a phone call, it will take exactly what the phone call costs out of their trust account. So it'll be more like one system versus the two that we have right now.
So you don't have anything like on their commissary accounts, just what the range of amount?
Well, this report is 700, almost 700 pages. So I would have to, I would need more time to get back to you as far as the range of what they have for balances on their accounts.
Wow. Do people want that?
700.
I don't want a 700-page
No.
report.
No, that's why I would like to have time to consolidate a report so that you can
Yeah.
see what the ranges are, plus go to, you would want to know what the phone side is as well, because like I said, this is their commissary side, their banking side, and they have balances in their phone accounts as well.
And by June, that's all gonna be merged.
Yes.
Peter? Thank you, Troy, for making us
My pleasure.
so much.
Only the phones.
Right.
Anything else on the phone situation before we transfer to commissary? Isaac?
I just, and I'm deferring to Tim, but the attorney lines are for, folks are not charged to speak their turn. There are
Thank you.
attorneys for phones.
So attorney calls are free. Is that new with IC Solutions, or did they have to pay when they were with Viapath?
I don't believe that's new. IC Solution hasn't taken over yet. So that's under the current.
So if attorney calls are free, and you said you had an indigent fund to pay for attorney calls,
Mhm.
something doesn't jive.
Sure, so I believe I said I need to verify on the indigent calls to see what in addition attorney calls it could pay for. But I think we just verified also that the attorney calls are free. So
Right. So
thanks for clarifying.
the fund.
Yeah.
Tim, could you just identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, Tim Burgess, the Executive Director of Vermont Cure. So if someone wants to contact their attorney, they have to use phone credits to do that. But if their attorney wants to call them and they call into the facility, there's a phone designated for that. So you can't just pick up the phone and dial your attorney unless you want to pay for that call.
Incoming.
An attorney could call in
Anytime.
anytime. So they are paying
They are paying.
for an attorney call.
Get to their attorney to get a call back, yes, they're paying.
Can I ask one more clarifying?
Yeah.
The new IC Solutions contract starts in 2025. I looked ahead and saw how long the Keefe contract is. How long is the contract going to persist with IC
The
Solutions?
same amount of time.
To 2033?
Yes.
Do you have a renewal clause in that, or does it just?
Yeah, I think there's 2 optional 1-year extensions on that.
Anything else on the phone calls? What happens, and this is not connected to the phone calls. What happens, everyone I'm assuming that comes into the facility through book, and they're booked, what happens to their cell phone? Because most people are gonna have a cell phone, I would assume. What happens?
Taken as property. We do make effort to have somebody come pick up their property. by an individual
Family
that they
member,
identify.
friend.
Yes.
Do you see many contraband cell phones coming into the facilities?
We did a statewide kind of contraband search a number of weeks ago, and I don't believe any phones were found. I think it was just diverted medication and things of that lower level.
It is an issue in other states.
Yeah.
It's a major issue.
Yeah, I heard it was, so.
Vermont has a different system, and some things that are problems in other states, such as gang activity, is less of an issue.
Mhm.
Drones, they have problems with drones coming in.
We tried to
States we
get that.
Like dropping stuff off. Yeah.
We dealt with the drones issue about 6 years ago. We dealt with that.
We created statute. for it.
We created statute about that.
But other states do have constant issues we hear from their states of drones.
We dealt with that 6 years ago.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but it's kind of
It's
funny with
serious.
with like the,
It's
the
serious.
drones coming in and bringing in
Yeah,
stuff.
they'll drop stuff
Wow.
in
I didn't
the
even-
rec yards. They can drop stuff in the rec yards, or they can figure out what the movement is of the facility if they want to break in and or escape or, aid an
Contract
event.
cell phone to communicate with the drop. Yeah, pick up.
There's a lot that's involved.
How do they prevent the drones now?
Well, we worked on where they could fly things.
Newt. For like a newer drone, it's interesting. There's actually kind of like an invisible, like invisible boundary sort of. So if
Force
you-
field?
Yeah, so if you have a new drone, it will genuinely like bump up to the facility's perimeter, but not allow you to go inside. Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
We dealt with this 5 or 6
Wow.
years ago.
yeah.
We spent a lot of time in this committee working on drones.
The only issues we've really.
Welcome to corrections.
Flying over.
Interesting. Very
You're gonna find out so much about corrections that never even crossed your mind.
interesting. That's for sure.
You haven't talked about the muffin eater.
You know,
We haven't talked about that one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Part of commissary, it's muffins.
muffin eater. Anyway, we'll get to that one. Okay, let's switch to commissary. If we're done with the phones.
I'm done with the phone. Tell me if I'm done.
More about those anymore.
It's very complicated.
Very complicated.
Commissary. So Keep Commissary Network is the new and current vendor. We'll have their own separate agreement with them established now. Goes through the same term as the new IC Solutions contract through January of 2033. The services included in that contract are your typical commissary, the banking that Nicole has spoken about a little bit, and deposits. So those deposits include deposits to the incarcerated individuals' accounts so they can purchase commissary and phone time. Products offered on commissary are hygiene products not already standard issue at the facilities, batteries, coffee, snack food items, and then we can get some other like clothing items for them as well.
So it might be helpful for the committee to know what is the standard issue to an inmate.
It varies by facility. Specifically, Chittenden is a little bit different, but it's, soap, shampoo, things of that nature. Kind of what you might get.
Toothpaste.
Yeah, toothpaste, all your kind of basic need items.
Outdoor clothing,
Sorry.
outdoor clothing.
I think we do have jackets and hats.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
We did that.
For print, I think, was one of the,
Years ago.
Yeah.
We're not getting coats.
yes,
We're not getting coats.
right.
But not regular clothing, just the jackets.
They
and
do
hats.
get clothing,
A
yeah,
uniform.
yes, but they can buy some additional things if they want certain sneakers, or additional clothing than what they're issued.
And they get socks, sneakers.
Yeah.
T-shirts, shorts.
Yeah, those slides, I think, are more common, standard issue than sneakers.
So extra clothes that they could get at the commissary would be what?
Nicole, can you talk about the friends and family?
Oh, the Vermont Package Program.
Yes.
So that is where family members can go in and also order. It's a larger variety than what's on the commissary, like sneakers, different clothing items. They can order those items for the incarcerated. Where, like Kristen said, on the commissary, it's more standard, like crew neck shirts, briefs, shorts, underwear, those types of items.
They're all folks who are incarcerated are wearing a standard uniform, and those are what, navy blue?
I think the women have a maroon color. I can't recall the color at each.
So there are items available other than what are listed on pages 52 and 53 of the contract?
Through the
Is that-
package program.
Yeah, through the family package program. So they can go online and select packages more typical around the holiday season and get some extra items that are
That's-
not in those on that listing that you're looking at.
The family would pick those up, or
They order them and then the commissary provider delivers them to the
Maybe.
facility. Friends and family or whoever orders it.
It's like a gift.
Yeah, it's like if I went online on Amazon and sent you something.
right?
So 2 more questions about the items available. When you mentioned standard issue, I didn't hear menstrual products, I assume
Yes.
for.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
okay.
is, and if I could elaborate a little bit, we're working with a program called Women on the Rise through our partnership with Chicago Beyond to evaluate both our standard issue items and our commissary items to ensure that we have appropriate products available in both arenas for people of color. I think it's an area we aren't very robust in. That's one example of what we're trying to do to improve our commissary offerings. Another is trying to get more healthy, nutritious items available on commissary. Our leadership group next week is looking at the vending machines. Those will be refrigerated, so we're hoping to offer more healthy options in there, as well as some over-the-counter medications like Tylenol and things of that nature that they now have to put in a slip for to the well path and have those items provided to them. So just
So where are the vending machines?
they are not, we don't have them yet. We're just looking at how we can implement them where it makes the most sense. Certainly will be one at Chittenden and then some saturation at the other facilities.
Troy, and then Sean?
I just want to back up to the contract. And then time, I don't mean to blindside you all, and there's not a lot in here, but timely, and the chair was here, Rep from Bennington were here. I got a letter yesterday from an inmate about commissary, so I want to read that. I think this is a good way to get lived experience into the room. For the contract that just reinitiated on February 1st, how many other bids were there for that contract?
I believe we had 5 or 6 bids. I can double check on those. For commissary, there was 1 bidder. And it was
That's okay, that's what I'm getting at.
for the larger bid, we received those others
What do you
for
mean by large?
tablets.
Oh, okay,
Because we issued 1 RFP and could bid on the total package or separate.
gotcha, okay.
For the phone situation.
Only
Right.
one, only Keith bid for commissary.
Correct.
And that's what we had before?
That is, yes.
And then at some point, I'm gonna want to see, in a conversation I had with the commissioner, I think this past summer, I may not remember this correctly. He indicated that there might be statutes in the way right now that would prevent the state from just taking over and running their own commissary. Do you know off the top of your
I
head?
don't know
Competing
of what that
business,
would
like,
be.
we wouldn't be able to compete with local businesses, things like that.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not aware of
Okay.
the details of that, but
Okay. If it's okay with the committee, this is short. I'd like to read it. Again, I just by circumstance, it arrived yesterday. I'm not gonna mention the inmate's name. Came from Southern State. Mr. Hedrick, representative. The address. Dear Representative Hedrick, my name is X. I learned your name on House Bill 294, so we're being watched. So Vermont DOC and Keith Commissary jacked up I'm gonna want to talk about this, jacked up our canteen prices again and gave no 30-day notice, per DOC policy. He sent me that as well.
What is in the canteen?
No 30-day notice per DOC, yeah, that's the
Canteen is what it
commissary.
used to be
Yeah.
called. That was actually.
Okay,
the
so it's
vendor, So it just has kind of.
So when DOC was called on the 30-day notice, this enclosed memo is what they posted circulating. So I ordered commissary for today, 4/9/25. The price increase has not come back down. It is effective now. So I did an electronic grievance on the overcharge. I also wrote a request form to the business manager here at the Southern State Correctional Facility. Gist of it all, I asked that refunds be automatically made to all inmates overcharged, as I have the feeling that if each inmate does not complain of the overcharge, that Keith and Southern State will pocket our money. If you or any other representatives wish to speak on inmate rec fund, I would like to enlighten you on what BTDOC has done to cut out the inmates' participation on the rec fund committee. We all thank you for taking a look at fair pricing, as do our families who hard-earned dollars mostly provide for inmates. PS, the rec fund money is generated by the phones and commissary. So I think my question that came out, I have a few questions that came out of here that we may not necessarily get to today. But how often do those prices increase? And what prevented them from doing the 30-day notice?
Sure, I wasn't aware that there wasn't 30 days. I'll definitely look into that. Appreciate you reading that. It's not on a scheduled rotation that
Okay.
price changes happen. It's just whenever the vendor has changes to their pricing and they submit it. But I'll definitely follow up on that and see what we can do to correct.
Is that in that
I-
30-day, do you know, is that just departmental policy?
It seems reasonable. I'm not aware of what policy they're referencing, but I mean, it does seem reasonable that we would give a certain amount of notice for folks. Something also concerning about the cut to participation in the rec fund committees.
Yeah.
Also wasn't aware of that, so.
It's the commissary, the proceeds from the commissary, not the phone or the tablets, because that goes back to the vendor. The charge per minute. But the proceeds from the commissary, does that go into the rec fund?
The commissions go into the rec fund.
All of it?
Yes, all of it.
And the committee helps decide.
Yeah, right, well, I formerly thought that each facility had a rec committee and they had a certain amount of money that they could direct where that money was spent. Other than that, it goes to pay for 6 rec coordinator staff, 1 in each facility. And then also supplies rec equipment, basketballs and things, or whatever they choose in each facility.
How does the contract make any money if the commissary amount goes to the rec fund? There's got to be some money that goes to the
I have an idea.
Hmm?
I have an idea.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Sure, so I mean, the vendor is a wholesale, they buy it wholesale. They apply a markup and then there's another markup for the commissary. And I can get you a listing of what the items are and the cost, if that's helpful.
Who pays for the wholesale costs? Is that DOC?
No, the vendor buys it, sells it through the commissary process, and then the vendor the inmate, incarcerated individual pays for the commissary, and then we're issued the commission check.
Brian, and then Kevin, and then Joe.
I guess for my part, I'm wondering how the pricing is determined. You know, it's very clear with the phone calls. How is this done?
We do not determine the pricing, the vendor does. That's how it's determined.
And then what would make it change? Just they say it needs to?
For an example, during COVID, supply chain was a big issue and they marked up in accordance to what their vendors were charging them. And so that's what we've seen as the typical means for price increases.
But they don't need to provide evidence or anything. They just say it's gotten more expensive.
We did ask them to provide evidence during COVID because it was a pretty substantial increase.
Yeah.
We haven't required it of them, but they have on occasion provided it if they felt that it was a larger increase than you might normally expect, especially for popular items that we saw.
Thanks.
Kevin, and then Joe.
It sounded like you actually have a list of what their cost is, what their markup is, and then the additional markup.
I don't know if it includes their original cost. I'll get you the listing, and we can detail that out.
But so you don't know the profit margin they're making?
I don't know the profit margin they're making
That's
off the
fine.
top of my head, but it might be on that list, so we can follow up with that.
And I might have misunderstood what you said. It sounded to me like I heard you say you're working at making sure that people of color have different items.
Yeah, the
What would be an
appropriate,
Example of that.
yeah, appropriate hygiene items for their like different hair type as one of the primary examples.
Okay.
We had the organization look at our current commissary listing, and the current list of state issued, hygiene products, and there was some missing items, in there, and then some unnecessary items, that they didn't feel were needed for them specifically.
Joe and then Mary?
So is the kind, so page 20, I think line 710, this speaks about pricing in general and says that it should be consistent with local convenience stores. And then I think there's actually a fairly itemized price guide on pages 52 and 53 at the end.
Yeah, they do include in the original contract, and then there are changes during the life of the
Which, I mean,
contract.
frankly, appears to be consistent with that comment on page 20, line 710. I did find, and obviously it's a 53-page document, I just read it through quickly. For some reason, the Quran is $27 and the Bible is $16.
Yeah, that is
Even though
one
the Quran's a
thing.
much shorter document. I thought that.
Yeah, that is for sure on very high part of the list for something we're looking at to see if we can find parity
Yeah.
here.
Then page 26, number 6, talks about commissions
Mhm.
to DOC, but I couldn't
Yes.
find anywhere what that commission rate is. Is that in this document?
It did just recently change, so let me give you what that actual,
Is it a flat or is it?
it is a flat,
sales?
it's a percentage, yes.
Is that included in the pricing in 52, 53? Or is that over and beyond that?
I believe it's included in that final price. It's not added on top of that.
Okay.
So what you see is what the person pays.
Mary?
How do you get out that you're needing folks to bid on a new contract? Where the other one you've gotten like 5 folks to do, and I know that encompass both pieces. But like you only have one person put a bid in, they virtually have a monopoly. They can charge whatever they want. So how do you get out the means that you're looking for contractors to do this?
Sure. For this one in particular, we advertised it on the electronic bulletin board that the state uses to issue RFPs. We did also reach out to other networks and vendors in the corrections space. We've posted on our public facing website. And then their networks have kind of a word of mouth as well.
In the past, have you gotten where you've had more folks bid on?
We had more folks this time bid than the previous.
But in this one category, you did not, you had one.
We had one, yes.
So in past times, did you have more than one in this area?
The last time there was less total bids and the commissary was part of another vendor's tablet bid. So it was a combined bid. And we didn't have a separate commissary bid on the last one.
So I'm sorry, is that commission rate available? You know what that is?
If they could look it up, or Nicole, if you're still on and have it,
What's your question?
that would be the commission
What
rate.
the commission rate is?
Let me just double check.
Sure, I mean, to Representative Morris's comment, I think this goes back to what the commissioner said a little bit about the healthcare space as well. And there, it's a relatively small universe of folks, of these for-profit
Mhm.
private contractors. And they're all essentially pretty similar to one another. So be surprised if the rates are all that different from one to the next, but it's possible.
Joe? It's pretty vague.
But it sounds like you
Yeah, just
just
say what it is.
have an open bid. You don't specifically go to vendors and say, will you provide us a
No.
proposal?
Correct, it's an open bid process.
Okay. Therefore, you don't know why they're not bidding.
Right, I think on the commissary side too, they have warehouses in New England, and so the farther you go out, the more the cost increases. If they have to ship commissary from, Texas or wherever, there's that added cost in the supply chain as well.
We ever,
Go ahead.
have we ever actually made a comparison of the pricing in the commissary to James's convenience store?
I have really low prices, sir.
Oh, well, then that's a bad way to look at it. Right. No, I'm being a little facetious, but there is a major difference between that and Walmart. So I just wondered if that kind of comparison was ever actually made.
Not. Well, but I believe it's in the bill that.
I read through it quickly on 52 and 53, and it seems to be consistent in the ballpark.
It does or doesn't?
It does.
Okay,
20-ounce orange soda, $2.62.
it's not that.
That's similar to a convenience store. I'm just picking that an item. Cajun chicken ramen, 85 cents.
Deal.
No shot at you, James, but I don't grocery stock at your place.
Save a lot of money.
So some of the proceeds at the commissary goes into their rec fund as well. Or not?
The commissions all of the commissions go directly into the rec fund. Right. Doesn't offset our costs. It doesn't offset operations. It's all directly into their rec fund.
You're finding some items are more in demand than others.
Yes.
What are some of those items?
Honey buns, popular one.
$2.25.
Yeah, that is an item that has increased. That's a supply chain issue. Coffee, certain coffees are really popular, certain chips. Those are the big ones that stick out for me.
Let's move on because we're scheduled for GS at 11. We're running over, Wanda, so bear with us.
Oh, that's fine. You've got a whole audience out in the hallway too.
Oh.
Dish area,
Oh.
yes.
So let's finish with quickly this sheet and then we'll to tie it up.
Okay. Facility work programs.
Yes.
This could take a long time, but
Should we reschedule you for this?
we might want to. I think
Let's
there will be a lot of
questions.
questions.
Sarah, could you give us a second, please? Yeah, could you spin us through the other state slides that were
Real quick.
with those calls? I think those are important. Yeah, so you just they're big picture if you want to take these. But we just put a few slides here. This is from some of our neighboring states, as we said. I think Connecticut was the first state in 2021 that eliminated fees for calling and messaging. And there has been some movement from the governor's budget this year that came up to eliminate the messaging in their system. I think they're looking at trying to close I think it's about $3.5 million for their system for messaging for incarcerated folks per year. So that's something that the governor has proposed eliminating to make up a budget shortfall. And I think if we page the next
So the state's currently paying for that.
Yes.
So his budget addresses zero that out and
Yeah,
then shift it to the inmates.
Exactly. You can imagine there's been advocates who have spoken out against that. And we just also wanted to highlight what happened in Massachusetts, which I think it was 2023, that they've made those calls, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, those calls for free. As you can imagine, those calls spiked. I think if you do the next slide here, you can see the fiscal implications of that for the state.
But then they didn't put any parameters around it.
That's what I was
So
gonna put. So the governor of Massachusetts did include 35 million in her initial budget proposal, and I think the legislature trimmed that to $10 million. And the program in that year cost 20 million. So
I mean-
make sure you're aware of that.
Well, that to me indicates we are not providing what would be a fair access to what I certainly consider a basic human need, which is contact with our support systems. So this graph that you showed us on the Massachusetts spike, to me indicates that need was remarkably suppressed up until 2023. And then when we unsuppress it, that costs money. That's how I look at that graph. I don't look at it that necessarily as an indication that right, we're just fulfilling needs. That's how I look at
Right,
that.
and the department, just to be clear, the department we are agnostic on the policy, and it is your decision as policymakers whether to eliminate these fees. But it is our job as the executive branch to show you the fiscal implications of those
Right.
decisions.
Gotcha.
And to your comment, Troy, I wonder if they'll look at those account balances wouldn't sort of speak to that a little bit.
I wonder.
Yeah.
No, and then Sean?
Just going back to the commissary. Do we know what the commission rates are?
I was just looking it up. I want to say it's 32.
32%?
I believe that's what it is, but we can, I'd really like to verify that.
Good or bad?
I don't know. I've never been on either side of its contracts, but I just wanted to know what the number was.
And,
Markup, that's not abnormal.
and the commission, is that a new thing? The
No.
Commission?
No, we've always had
32%.
that.
Maybe this is a foolish question, but do the inmates want the commission rate on there? Or is it? a
I don't know the
forced
answer to
tax
that.
On them that
Sure,
many of them don't.
sure.
They'd rather have the prices low and
So
to go the
Yeah.
recreation.
just as a follow-up, it'd be nice to confirm that, and that pricing really doesn't look terrible considering it's a 32% commission bill. But secondly, would it be possible to get testimony on the flow of that money
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how, and who gets to make a decision about where it goes? Is it for recreation?
For the rec fund, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we need to close this up because we got a whole call full of folks, but let's reschedule, folks, so, DOC's in the room right now. Can you work with Phil? Figure out when you can come back with this? And then we'll go from there. Let's quickly go off of YouTube so that we can make a shift here of folks and take a very quick break if people
one
have
moment
to.
every day.
Yeah, just hold on. Yeah, I don't need to.
And Chair, would testimony next time then be just about the wage portion?
No, we're gonna